Boom, boom. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory. I'm John Bauer, finding an X at the Bauer Club, joined by Dan Lamagna at Coach Dan Dynasty. Mitch is not here tonight, as you can see if you are watching live or watching back on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel. We started a few minutes early tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because as you can see, Dan is in Rangers mode.
So we had season, buddy.
And I didn't even realize they were playing my Pittsburgh Penguins. And my Pittsburgh Penguins, as you can tell, because I didn't know they were playing tonight. So there we go. But we do have some football stuff we want to talk about, because I certainly don't want to talk about hockey. Amarion Hampton. Dan goes to the IR. There, of course, is going to be a short-term impact here on clearly production, because it's going to be very hard for him to produce when he is not on the field. But then we're going to see it in the trade market, in the dynasty community. Amarion Hampton on IR. It sounds like it's going to be closer to just the 4 weeks. It doesn't sound like it's going to be something that goes on throughout the season. Knock on wood. Hopefully that's the case. But Dan, Amarion Hampton, in general, where were you on Hampton coming into the season as the early stages of the season have progressed? Obviously, we have the Najee Harris situation and then Hampton really getting thrust into the work. What are your thoughts before we even get into the IR situation?
Yeah, man, going into the season, he was my number 2 running back behind Genty, but thought he was in a better situation than Genty. At least that's what we were, I think, hoping with the Chargers. You know, it was all signs pointing up with the direction of that team under Coach Harbaugh. But then JB, it was kind of a slow start, right? And then the O-line started to get injured. Then everybody started to get decimated. And then now, just when Hampton was starting to kind of find his niche in that offense, despite some of the team's woes, catching the ball, getting more involved, he gets injured. So that's definitely depressing as any one of us that have Hampton shares.
Yeah, and there's been an interesting dynamic, especially within the Discord community. We always talk about the Discord. I am in there 24/7. Patreon.com/allgasket in the Discord. Get the bonus content, get my cross-positional tiers, a lot of great stuff, a lot of great people in there to interact with. But we're seeing a lot of conversations and a lot of, would you do this? Would you do that? As always, it does depend on your roster construction. It depends on the way your team is built, the direction it's going, but then also what other assets do you have available that you can leverage? I see T. Sanford. There are some vultures out there trying to get Hampton. and we'll get into that a little bit, but you look at Amarion Hampton, and this even takes into account the extremely slow start. This takes into account getting injured early in week 5, 15.4 PPR points per game. That was 13th across the running backs. Last 3 games, 21.8 points per game. That would be 5th. 73% snap participation, 7th in route participation, 12% target share. And that's what really intrigues me, because when we came into this season, as much as I liked Amarion Hampton, as much as most people liked Amarion Hampton, the big concern was we know the Chargers aren't really going to be utilizing the running back in the receiving game, but a 12% target share, that is nothing to scoff at. You know, he's getting 5-6 receptions per game, and that's just easy PPR points, accumulating there. He's getting a lot of the work inside the 80%, 2.71 yards after contact per attempt, pretty solid. He is extremely efficient and effective in man concepts. You go to zone, not so much. But then back to the receiving work, 8.5% first read per rate. So he is getting early looks throughout Justin Herbert's progression, and that's 12th best at the 8.5%. So I want to look at some trades here that we have seen, and this is from dynastydaddy.com. There we go. Dan, did I throw you off here? First of all, spreading us out wide, but then making us circles.
I'm enjoying this. You know, as much as we miss Mitchell, we got a little extra screen real estate tonight, and you're getting fancy with the graphics.
I'm trying to. I see Monkey Pack in the chat. I see Anahola in the chat. What's up, guys? So some trades here, and we'll get into some specifics and in situations that we might be looking to do something similar. But first up, Dan, 12 teams, start 10, full PPR, Saquon Barkley for Amarion Hampton in a 26th third.
Before I answer that, JB, in what scenarios in all of your dynasty portfolio, right? And our listeners, we all have different amounts of dynasty teams, but I think there's a lot of us that at least have a handful, 10, 20, or you could be like JB and have a million. But where, like, a 4-game injury right now for a guy that has a really bright future, and the Chargers they're in a little bit of limbo now with injuries, but they're still a 3-2 team in first place. Like, I think most of my rosters could withstand this, and I'm not going to blink, and I'm going to keep Hampton. If anything stinks, you know, hey, maybe I trade some like second or third round pick if I'm a little thin at running back. Like, it's not going to involve me moving Hampton. It's going to involve me getting an extra running back if I don't have the depth or an extra flex player. Are you similar there? Like, you're not thinking about moving Hampton with a 4-game injury, even though we saw in the chat there's vultures out there, maybe like myself, that might want to share right now.
Yeah, that's not going to be happening, at least from where I am. If I have Amarion Hampton on a contender, hopefully my running back room can withstand the 4-week injury. You know, obviously that's best case scenario. But if I can't, and this kind of ties back to even the discussion centered around Joe Burrow and Malik Neighbors, and obviously their injuries far more significant, but the running back position is far more volatile when it comes to value. Much like we talked about with those two, I would be looking to fill that void elsewhere by utilizing other assets. And just like you said, Dan, can I move a second for a player that is going to give me 10 to 12 points a game if I need it? But again, hopefully I can withstand it, but maybe there's situations where I had let's say Amarion Hampton, Chase Brown, a Trey Benson, James Conner type. And now I really do need to make a move. I'm sitting there 4-1, 5-0. So I see where these folks might be coming from. The big one in the chat, and I think there's one further down on the page here, it's Amarion Hampton for Quinshon Judkins. And a lot of people saying, well, if I'm a contender, that's a move I would be looking to make. It's a 4-week injury, like you said, Dan. There's no reason for me that I'm going to be moving Amarion Hampton down within my tiers within the position.
JB, what about your rosters that are maybe 3-2 but fragile, or off to a slow start 2-3 and just had some bad luck? And, you know, you're getting an offer like we're seeing here with Barkley for your Hampton share in a third. And you know what, John? You know, you got a little newborn there, man. Christmas is coming. You're playing for the prize this year. Is there a scenario where you go after a Judkins or a Barkley? It's not like you're getting a slouch back in return. You're not going to be mad at having them on your roster a year from now.
No, and I get it. It's just, this actually came up. I was offered a Saquon Barkley for my Amarion Hampton, and I rejected it, and it wasn't even me adding a third to it. And I actually, on a few rosters where I have the running back depth, I went to look at what the Amarion Hampton owners were doing, where they were in the standings. When you look at the max points for, you look at the all play, whatever resource you have in metric you have available. And I offered a Saquon Barkley. I offered a Quinshon Judkins straight up. And I was not able to get one done. So people that are saying they would move off of Amarion Hampton at a discounted rate, I'm wondering how much Amarion Hampton they actually have.
Right. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to move off him for a discounted rate, but if someone really wanted him bad, Judkins definitely passed the eye test, even though I've been really hard on Judkins because of his off-field behavior, JB, which I'm still not condoning or happy about. But boy, he has looked good.
He's looked very good. He's looked very good, but let's see here. Two folks, Monkey says just paid a second and third for Javonte. I would be interested in doing that even as insurance if the Amarion Hampton situation didn't pop up. Hillbilly says go buy Javonte. And then he says I offered Bucky and got rejected. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because I don't see many. See T. Sanford, I wouldn't call Quinshawn a discounted rate, but that's where we're gonna disagree a little bit because I had Amarion Hampton clearly above Quinshawn Judkins. What? 3 days ago. That hasn't changed.
How quickly the market shifts, at least in Twitter.
Well, no, but that's the world we live in with Dynasty. Think about it in terms like the Michael Carter situation. We'll get into the Cardinals a little bit later, but that situation, you have a running back that came in, wasn't active, wasn't dressed on the game day roster, comes in, and now you have people there's trade polls on X involving a 26 second for Michael Carter. I saw one earlier from a fairly prominent account posting a trade out, and I'm like, that's where we are. That's how quickly things change. Obviously, Michael Carter for a second compared to Hampton for whatever we're going to talk about is a little bit different, but it's kind of a microcosm of what the Dynasty landscape is from a manager perspective.
I think it's good to put in perspective that we really need to be mindful of what we're getting for our picks. You talk about the Hamptons and the Junkins, and they're premium guys. So like when they get injured, they go down. That's a tough injury. I'm not ever selling them cheap. But like Michael Carter, I think I got offered a third, Michael Carter to one of my rosters for a third today. And I'm thinking like one, I didn't need him. It was on a contending roster. And you know me, JB, I'm willing to trade draft picks, but I am not giving up an asset for a guy that was third, fourth string just a couple of weeks ago because of injuries. Benson will be back in a few weeks. That is such a short-term desperation rental. Maybe a fourth, but it wouldn't be a third for me.
All right. So would Barkley pique your interest here, even if it was straight up? And you need that running back?
I always worry about running backs with age and the amount of carries we have, and we're not exactly lighting the world on fire in Philly this year, so it wouldn't pique my interest. There's too many good years ahead of Hampton, prime years ahead of Hampton, that I would respectfully decline. Not insulted at all by the offer, but would respectfully decline.
This next one, I'm not really sure what was going on, but Romeo Dobbs, Evan Ingram, and David Montgomery for Amarion Hampton in 26th third, 12-team start, 10 full PPR. Have to assume it's just somebody that is panicking and they're like, I need points. Well,
is that an instant panic there?
Yeah, or maybe a misclick and then the situation can be reversed. Who knows? Travis Kelce and Saquon Barkley. So a little bit steeper. Travis Kelce and Saquon Barkley for Amarion Hampton in a 26 fourth, 12-team start, 10 full PPR, only an extra half point tight end premium.
Especially only a half tight end premium, but even if it was full premium in a 12-team league, again, I feel I'd be regretting that in 4 weeks. Never mind next year after Kelsey's retired.
Amarion Hampton in a fourth for James Cook.
I would still, we're getting more tempting, but I still respectfully decline.
I don't hate this one.
Nah, I mean, James Cook's crushing it, man. Like he was up in the rankings to start the season, and he only just moved up. Like he just looks great. That Buffalo offense is great. You're got a nice contract.
You might even be able to get a little something extra with Cook if that manager was disappointed his most recent performance.
Yeah, this is the closest trade, JB, where depending on my roster situation, I want to contend and win now. I could really use Cook for these next 4 weeks.
Quinshawn for Amarion Hampton, just like I mentioned earlier. I'm still
need a plus.
And let's go through about 2 more trades. Too many pieces here. Too many pieces. Amarion Hampton for Chuba Hubbard, a 26 first and a 28 first. 12 team start, 10 full PPR.
It's not terrible, but I'm going to want Hampton in 4 weeks if I'm a contender, and I still like him as the best asset in this deal. A little Rico Dowdle creeping into Chuba Hubbard world there, JB.
He looked good. He looked good. And here's another comment from Monkey. My Hampton teams are in first place. So again, this is kind of like an ideal situation. You've given yourself that little bit of buffer. Maybe you're 5-0, 4-1. I can absorb a loss or two. But we always talk about the churn and burn at the running back position. Ideally, and this is more of just a philosophical way of approaching it, ideally, you can move other assets. And that has been a common theme with me when we've talked about any injuries. Again, going back to Joe Burrow, find other options as opposed to moving Joe Burrow. That's a last resort. Malik Neighbors, Amarion Hampton. It's just I don't want to say panic because some of these trades they're perfectly fine. So like Tet in a second for Amarion Hampton. I honestly have no real issue with that.
Do you see Ty's blockbuster in the chat he made today? That's an interesting one with Genty.
I saw that and I threw it up. I thought, where'd you go, Ty?
There's only a few up there, Genty and Mason. For Hampton at 27 first. I'm a little impatient, Ty, so I don't know if I could wait for the 27 first. And I'm a Genty homer, although the Raiders drafted him without having an O-line to protect him. You know,
I like this trade a lot, especially
in dynasty theory. It makes sense, right?
Especially if you're able to backfill those points with other assets, or you're not contending.
Ty makes a smart move.
Ty makes a lot of smart moves over there. This damn, every time I scroll over between the screens, it pops out. And it really, I got to yell at Jeremy about that, even though it does have a ton of these fantastic features over here. But so that's Amarion Hampton to the IR. A lot of different ways you can look at it. And I would be very interested to see, obviously, if you're watching back on YouTube, if you are in the DD Fantasy Football Discord community, carrying on this conversation and talking about it in a little bit more detail afterwards.
One note before you shift players, one thing I was just really fascinated about, and it's truly not me being a homer, but we just look at schemes and coaches and how teams react to injuries. The Cowboys' offensive line this week were missing 4 starters. And I know the Jets are the Jets and have their issues, but they got Quinnen Williams and good linemen. Dallas's offense did not miss a beat. Javonte Williams still rushes for 100. Dak got touched once. Then you got a team like the Chargers, whose line is like, missing a few guys. And holy cow, Herbert is like just in danger of his life. But again, don't even know where I'm going with that, JB. But I'm trying to figure out rosters and trades, and we're all dealing with injuries. And I like looking at the O-line and how that impacts our fantasy players. I've been really just intrigued by teams that have handled the O-line injuries well and those that have not. And it's just frustrating for us as fantasy owners sometimes when you're relying on those guys.
Look no further than like Minnesota.
Another example.
A ton of injuries on the offensive line. And that's a situation where, okay, Aaron Jones goes down. A lot of people were high on Jordan Mason then. Well, hasn't necessarily been great. Not entirely his fault, but still that offensive line tying into obviously the larger fantasy picture. But, come draft night, if anybody drafts an offensive lineman, I get pissed off. I don't want
if it isn't a skill guy, we ain't having it.
If it's not a fantasy relevant player, just like wake me up for the next pick.
It's all relevant, JB. It's all connected.
I know. All right. Antonio Gibson goes down. Ramondre Stevenson cannot stop fumbling the ball. Is it finally Travion time in New England? And before I let you answer, Dan, there was a presser from Coach Vrabel and basically saying like, we're trying to find ways to get the kid the ball, get him involved. Then they mentioned the dreaded possibly kick return. Even though he was on kick return, he recovered that fumble when Gibson got hurt. But what's going on? Is this one of those situations, and I'm not saying off the field, but one of those situations behind the scenes that we just don't get a glimpse of what's going on?
First, I got to say, like in sports, sometimes, players have sports psychologists to help them get through certain mental aspects of the game. I think in fantasy football, us owners right now need a sports psychologist to help us understand what is going on in New England. JB, I have three potential scenarios. One, Vrabel is persistent on playing either what he believes is his best runner, and Stevenson, it seems, or a combo of backs. Is he that coach that wants to have multiple 3 running back system and have all these guys? Or he's adamant on not playing a rookie. Like, is it just a rookie thing and he doesn't want him to play? We always talk about pass pro, but this was this kid's strength in college. There was some whispers of maybe some early struggles, maybe just absorbing the playbook, where even though he's a good pass blocker, he wasn't knowing his protection schemes. But I haven't seen that, especially in recent games.
I don't get it.
His snaps in there. The kid looks solid, but like Stevenson can't protect the ball. Gibson tears his ACL in that game,
and he wasn't protecting. He wasn't protecting the ball prior to that.
No, both of them have issues, and Henderson is still getting limited touches. And then when he is on the game, it's either Drake May's passing, Drake May's running the ball. Like, Henderson still isn't even getting true like plays designed for him. He feels like a fourth option at best, and there's schematics there. So, JB, do you have a sports psychologist to help me with this? Because I'm very frustrated in every format of fantasy football I play. Travion Henderson.
It is baffling, and I mean, I gotta give it up to Mitch. Drake May he's looked the part.
Yeah, he looks special.
He has just been absolutely fantastic, and yeah, got to give it up to Mitch. Obviously, he's got some things tonight, but if he tunes in, maybe he'll feed his ego a little bit. But I don't get it. And the pass pro obviously is strength. You would want another weapon. Like, you have Diggs. Demario Douglas has not been involved. You have the beast, Hunter Henry, who is just incredible. But outside of that, like, Booty gets involved time to time. He'll make 1 or 2 solid catches a game. But outside of that, there just hasn't been much. And Ramondre Stevenson, like, it's not like we're putting Henderson behind a player that has just been fantastic. And I like Stevenson, the player overall, but the dude can't protect the ball. And he vultures. Yeah. Why don't we want to say vultures? Because it's not like Henderson's getting all the other work and Stevenson's taking the opportunity within the 5. But it's just, I don't understand it. And this is coming from somebody that has very little Henderson. But it's just a baffling situation, and has to be beyond frustrating for any of those Henderson supporters, because I don't think he's getting a fair shake right now. And again, maybe there is something else going on behind the scenes. Maybe he insulted Coach Vrabel's grandma. I don't know what happened, but something's going on.
They're the kind of things we're thinking of right now, because it doesn't make sense. And it's not just us being fantasy football homers in any capacity. We've all watched enough football games where normally 1 or 2 fumbles put you in the doghouse. And Stevenson's a guy that has had a history of fumbles. He was on the bubble going into this year because of it, and hasn't just fumbled once or twice. I mean, we're talking multiple costly fumbles here that, again, in real life football, that normally gets you benched. And again, I'm just thinking he's fighting this for some reason, but there is opportunity now, JB. Gibson sadly is out. I felt bad for the dude there, man. He came out of the tent crying. He knew he was severely injured there. He's definitely a competitive, good team football player, but in fantasy, that does open up an opportunity. Unless Vrabel brings another third running back in, JB, then we're really going to be tilting in a weekend here.
Well, I see Anna Hola's comment here. If they sign some guy off the street that gets more work than Hender, then I'll start to worry a little bit. I still just think he's too dynamic of a player. And at least from conversations we've had, I don't think we were necessarily expecting a workhorse role, but involvement in the passing game, being able to provide those splash plays, hasn't been an option there. So looking at some Travion trades very quickly. Give me 1 second here.
Got it. Hey, we all have that kick return from the preseason in our minds of Henderson that just looked electric.
I know.
And he was even running the ball decent in the preseason. It's like, why do you even get away from giving the kid touches? This Patriots team is better than I thought, though. That group of kind of misfits has been elevated by Drake May and probably that Vrabel coaching mentality. So it's encouraging.
Here, I think this one's interesting. Jonathan Taylor for Travion Henderson and Jordan Addison. 12 teams, start 10, full PPR.
Give me Jonathan Taylor, man. JT and the Colts just look legit. JT's still, in his prime here. Addison can't get out of the doghouse there, although Wentz is feeding him a bit still, despite his 1/4 suspension this week. I think it's a fair, but I like the Taylor side.
Does that change for you with your team direction? Let's say you've stumbled out of the gate and now you have an out on Jonathan Taylor, because I think that's a solid return, especially if you're assuming this is a buy-ish low opportunity on Travion Henderson. But we see how quickly that decline can happen. I don't want to say Travion Henderson is Caleb Johnson, but we see how it's worked out there in Pittsburgh.
I think being a start 10, I'm attracted to the star player who's not. I don't have him in the declining asset category yet there. I think there's some prime years here.
Travion Henderson for David Montgomery in a 26 first. 12 teams, start 10, half PPR.
That 26 first in itself could be better than Henderson. Then you're getting Montgomery to boot, whether you keep him, trade him, do whatever you want with him. I'm going to take the first in Montgomery. Again, I like Henderson. I really do. It's not just because he's not getting volume right now. They're playing the Saints this week. Gibson's out. Let's assume maybe there's a little bit of an uptick and we see some flashes from Henderson. I still like Monty in a first.
Yeah, it's going to be a very telling week. And looking at the current Dynasty Daddy rankings here, we had Hampton at running back 5. Travion's still running back 11 on there. And that's even with a pretty significant drop in his overall value. But I would take that 26 first and David Montgomery. And Wu says these are good offers at the moment. Yeah, like I don't think they're low balls by any means. But
right,
like when we're looking at James Cook or Travion Henderson or Josh Jacobs, Kyron, Brees, like I know we want to be ageist, especially at the running back position, but we also want opportunity. And that's the name of the game, especially at running back.
Yeah, be careful not to get too ageist with some of these backs we're looking at here and we're talking about, because we've seen some older running backs, the James Connors, the Derrick Henrys, that really have had some really good fantasy production into their late years. I know maybe it's the exception instead of the rule, but the Brees Halls and the JT Taylors and James Cooks have some very good years ahead.
Here's a fun one. 12 teams, start 10, full PPR. Ashton Genty or Marvin Harrison, Travion Henderson in a 28 second.
I'm going to go with Genty. And I'm a Marv Harrison homer too. See, the thing with Travion
this
Henderson,
offer would have looked a lot stronger 5 weeks ago.
Yes, 100%, 100%. I also think though Henderson wasn't our first or second running back out of this year's rookie class either. So we're also even though we're frustrated with it,
he was for some. He was the number 2, but
yeah, so some of them we're drinking the Hampton Kool-Aid like we were, but I see him as a third and sometimes even fourth back though. He was the number 2 in Ohio State.
A lot of pieces. Here we go. Swift in a first or Henderson in a second. 12 teams, start 10, full PPR.
I think an important team too important piece here is what first am I getting? If that's a
contenders
first,
how far apart are those picks? Yep.
If it's a contenders first, I'll take Travion if I think that's going to be late. If not, I'm still attracted by the first. Although Swift is a little less attractive than Monty in that other trade we're looking at. I mean, the Lions are rolling right now. Swift is still the guy. He's getting some catches, but the running game's not as attractive in Chicago.
Yeah, the spread on those picks would make the decision for me. If that's a mid 26 first, I'll take Swift in the first because there's a pick on both sides. And then if it's a late, and again, we all think we know, oh yeah, this is a late pick. It's only 5 weeks into the season. So much can happen. All right, one more Travion trade. Here's one, Travion for a 26 first straight up. Where does that 26 first need to be for you to take the pick straight up?
I mean, Henderson was a mid first pick to me this year. So,
and he's lost value, but there are questions on how the 26 class compares to the 25 and then certainly the 27, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. Early to mid, I'm going to roll the dice on that first. The 26 first.
All right. And I know there's going to be a lot of people saying it looks like a good time to buy Henderson. So if you are still invested, if you still are looking to up your exposure, now is the time to go out and plant that flag and take the chance on Travion Henderson. I can say for me, like I said, I have limited rostership across the board, but I'm not actively trying to go out and acquire Henderson just because where he's sitting now, I think there's far more room for him to go down. But again, we talked about it earlier. If he were to go out and pop off 2 really good games, probably top 6 back all of a sudden for Dynasty, because that is how quickly things change.
Yeah, he could be James Cook pretty quickly, right? Tied to Drake May on a winning team. We're all ready to move on from Stevenson as much as Coach Rabel will not let us.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But I will say with buys and injuries, I had to shove Ramondre in a few lineups last week. So those 2 touchdowns, I was like, business is not quite booming, but their business was we had a few sales. All right. To wrap up the show, and we'll see how long this takes us, but we're going to be digging through the trash. So I said to Dan, anybody that didn't follow us prior to joining the DD fantasy football community, Dan is a big dysfunction guy, very anti-dysfunction. So I said, Dan, I want to talk about, like, he said there were 10 teams that he just thought were trash, basically. So we're digging through the trash. We're going to talk about those 10 teams very, very quickly. 2 minutes per team-ish. We'll see how that works out. Dan's like, I'm definitely not making it for the rest of this hockey game. But
I think this is a good topic here because there are some good players or should be rostered players on this list, but there are so many frustrating scenarios and some great players that are being held back. Whether we're talking our dynasty rosters or, I play DFS. When I was watching the games this week, JB, I'm just starting to take notes on these teams, and that's where that came from. And to me, the common denominator on a lot of these teams is a combination of quarterback situations that are in flux, or headed towards disaster, head coaches and management situations that aren't good, and that's that team dysfunction where, hey, there's these stud dynasty players we have, but they're being held back by these situations. And you watch these games, there's some bad energy. They're not fun football games to watch because of this dysfunction. So I look forward to going through this list.
All right. So, and this is in no particular order, but the Las Vegas Raiders, and I was curious. So I went through the dynasty values again, just the rankings on dynastydaddy.com. The Raiders have 4 players in the top 150 for dynasty players, 2 in the top 100. This team is putting up 16 points per game, and that's 30th across the NFL. You look at the 4 assets that are in the top 150. Geno Smith, quarterback 30, Ashton Genty, running back 3, Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 45, Brock Bowers, tight end 1. So Dan, with those 4 assets, and again, we could dig in and we could talk about Trey Tucker. We could talk about Dante Thornton. If you think he's somebody that's going to pop off eventually, we could talk about Mayer. There's so many different assets for all of these teams, but I wanted to keep it as straightforward as possible and focus on those top 150 assets. But out of those 4 players at their respective prices that I just mentioned, who is most intriguing to you and who are you still gladly investing in at their current price?
And this seriously isn't bias, but for me, I think it still strategically or logically makes sense to be Brock Bowers, because before his injury, as he's playing on one leg because his dysfunctional team won't let him just rest for a week or 2 and heal up and be good the rest of the year, we lose him in our lineups. But I've seen him pop up on a couple trade blocks. I've heard, a couple trade conversations have happened. This was not happening pre-Brock Bowers injury. So JB, I don't think there's a better time to at least have a conversation and try to obtain him. Heck, you even got a share of Brock Bowers off of me in a league where I was very desperate running back. I mean, you had me kind of in a desperate situation, but again, I don't think these conversations happen otherwise with Brock Bowers. And I believe once he gets healthy, even though the team has some dysfunction, his production will be up again. So he's my choice of this list.
For the listeners, for the viewers, when we do our show notes, it's so high level, and it's just I listed the teams, I listed the players at their values so Dan could take a look at it, but that's all. You stole the thought out of my mind. I was curious. So again, I was over on Dynasty Daddy today. I did a week by week look over the last 4 weeks at the number of trades involving Brock Bowers versus the number of trades involving Trey McBride. It went like this. It switched.
How about that?
There are more trades involving Brock Bowers because, well, the injury, but also you're not getting that difference making production, but also you're not really getting it from Trey McBride. But I wanted at least a baseline to level set. Like, okay, how does this look compared to another top tier asset? So it's very crazy to think, okay, my favorite value here is a guy that is a top 10 startup pick, especially in tight end premium, tight end 1 overall, but you now have the ability to have that conversation. Whereas before, if I had Brock Bowers in the offseason, people were sending me offers, and some of them were very strong offers. Reject. So I can see it's a very specific situation with Brock, because the trade that you and I got done, you were looking to get points. I wasn't looking for points. I forked over, I believe, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, and we had other pieces involved too. But I was like, hey, let's get a Brock share in this format. And hey, it paid off for you, at least for 1 week. So that looked good.
For that league, the reason I did that too was I had Colston Loveland, who I still believe in. I had Elijah Arroyo. I had some tight end depth. And it was the only possible way on that roster I could fix my running back situation was by moving Brock Bowers, because no one in the deep, was it a 14-team league, I think it was, JB? Yeah. No one was trading me any running backs. I couldn't even get Isaiah Pacheco off of Mitch. Like, I couldn't do anything. So that's where I went. But again, I can see someone maybe wanting to pick Genty from that list, but I think Brock Bowers made the most sense and checked the most boxes.
I love Jacoby.
I had to give away my firstborn to get him before his injury. Brock Bowers. Like, it wasn't even a conversation.
No, I love Jacoby. So it's Jacoby or Brock for me. Genty, that's a fair price. And Geno Smith, that son of a bitch, he has hurt me too much. I don't
Speaking of that sports psychologist, I know you've got some feelings about Geno Smith, but that's going to have to be another episode, John.
That is another episode. So moving on to the New York Giants, again, digging through the trash. But this is a team, they have the building blocks that maybe they are starting to make that turn a little bit, even though they are only 1-4. But the New York Giants, 4 players also in the top 150, 3 in the top 100. That offense is still not firing on all cylinders, 17.4 points per game, 28th overall. Jackson Dart, quarterback, 21. Cam Scattaboo, running back, 23. Malik Neighbors, wide receiver, 5. And then Theo Johnson, tight end, 21. Who is your favorite value at those respective prices?
This is one where I easily could see like everybody in the chat disagreeing with me. Again, I'm just going on the word you just said there, JB, which was value. And for me, it's Theo Johnson, because he was a guy going into, before I even saw these show notes from you, JB, where you broke this down. I'm like, man, if there's anyone on the Giants who Dart's looking at, he's getting the red zone touches, has the potential that you might be able to obtain on the down low, it's Theo Johnson. You know, it doesn't mean you don't like those other guys more, right? But I think he is the most safest value play you could obtain on a very dysfunctional team that potentially could be weeks away from getting their coaching staff fired.
So it's a very small sample size, but with Dart at quarterback, 10% of Theo Johnson's routes go for a first down. So first downs per route run, that's one of the highest across all the tight ends. Again, just over the last 2 weeks, 26% first read percentage. So he is getting the looks from Dart, especially in the end zone. Over the last 2 weeks, he has 3 end zone targets. Only 2 other tight ends have more than 1 as well, and that's Waller and Ferguson. I like Theo Johnson a lot. Is he going to get 3 touchdowns on, 11 catches or whatever it was? No. Is that going to continue? No. But I do think Theo Johnson, the relationship, the rapport there with Jackson Dart, he's going to need that weapon. And Malik Neighbors obviously is injured. Is it going to be a Darius Slayton? Is it going to be a Wan'Dale Robinson? I think Theo is making a strong case there. But then Cam Scatterbo, he keeps elevating himself up there and running back 23. A little too expensive for me. But yeah, I would go Theo Johnson at tight end 21 as well.
Yeah, I think when you look at the ultimate value, Theo Johnson, based on talent and opportunity, was a guy I had in my top 20 before the season. If they ever get that offense right, he could climb. So at tight end 21, JB, I'm going to try to get some more shares this week.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the rankings here, and there are pivot opportunities available. So again, go over to dynastydaddy.com. It is a fantastic resource. Even though I was giving Jeremy a hard time about the little pop out there. That's all right.
Jeremy could take it there. He's got thick skin. And hey, if you had Brenton Strange, who just went on the injured reserve, maybe we just gave you a guy in Theo Johnson that could help your roster. And sorry if I opened up some more wounds.
Get that therapist ready for me, man, because I like Brenton Strange, and yeah, that was painful. He's also going on the IR. All right, this is the team that seemingly, excuse me, everybody loves to hate. Arizona Cardinals. They have 5 players in the top 150, 3 in the top 100. A little bit better from a point per game perspective at 20.6. They are 23rd in the NFL. They are 2-3. They are probably an Amari DiMarcado mistake away from being 3-2, even though I think he still may have had possession when he crossed that goal line, just barely. But why do these dudes keep dropping the ball? Why? I don't understand. But anyway, back to the dynasty discussion. So Kyler Murray, quarterback 15, Trey Benson, running back 30, Michael Carter is on here, running back 40, Marv, wide receiver 15, Trey McBride, tight end 2. Are there any of these pieces here that you're like, I'm actively trying to go out and acquire at the price?
There's 2. I will have conviction and pick one, because you did say pick one for the show. And I got to say, again, the Cardinals are another team, because these 2 guys that I think it's just common sense. We all want them on our rosters because of talent. We're in another year of Kyler Murray in Arizona finding a way to not elevate and, get the best out of these guys. I'm still buying Marv and Trey McBride, but McBride would be my choice of this, because I think he's another guy that, not to the level of Brock is in the conversation changing, because he's still producing, he's still scoring points, but I think he's a tick down from a year ago. So if you're just frustrated or not quite seeing that McBride return or expectation that you hope for, compared to everybody else, despite Arizona struggling, he's still, other than my boy Jake Ferguson, number 2 tight end. So I'm going to say I would still make attempts and efforts to go after McBride, because he's still a premium stud. And God, JB, can you ever imagine if Arizona had a quarterback for Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison? They would just be sick, but they don't. So I think we just got to take the highs and the lows.
And Kyler is just so despised across the board. It doesn't matter where you're looking. Monkey, that's a great question. Where is our man Frank? Frank is in the chat every single week. Do we send the search party out for him?
That's when we know we have a close community, when we are recognized and one of our loyal listeners here. Where is he tonight? Yeah, we're missing Frank here. He definitely would have had the challenge flag that I normally throw out on probably a couple of my picks already, knowing Frank.
He and I were disagreeing in the Discord earlier today, but it's always a great conversation. I don't think there's really any player within the Cardinals offense that I am like, oh man, I got to go out and acquire them today. I don't think it's there. I love Trey McBride. I think he's appropriately valued, but outside of him, I'm not I got to go get Harrison today. I got to go get Benson. I got to go get Kyler. And that's kind of the premise of this segment. It's a lot of gross offenses.
Yeah. JB, this is another one where, again, I just got frustrated with the Cardinals. So I threw them on my 10 terrible team list. Like, they're 2-3, and it is just another year of, like, I don't see how they fix this. I really don't. Like, I don't see him giving up on Kyler Murray anytime soon. He's this average quarterback that has this running ability that you like, and he has little moments, and he will always have little moments and probably be better than the options the Cardinals could find unless they could somehow be bad enough to put themselves in a position to get a top draft pick, but they won't. They'll be like this 500 meddling team that just every year cannot replace Kyler Murray. And again, I just think Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride are two of the most talented players at their respective positions that are always going to be limited by their situation. Whether it's the quarterback situation or the O coordinator, they've got issues.
Over to the
But I still want him, though. I'm still betting on talent, JB. I just got to throw that out there. I still will always bet on talent.
I mean, and I see the comment from Hill Bullies. He had a good first half. He had a really good first half. Like, get him the ball. I know Kyler's saying, I want to spread the ball out. I don't want to force it. Well, maybe it's time to force it because what you're doing isn't working.
Truth, man. Just find a way to get these guys. But I think some of the schematic concerns we had with Arizona going back to last year, where like they don't move Marvin Harrison around like certain teams are creative and getting guys in the slot and different formations and different motions.
You get the pre-snap motion. Yep.
It's vanilla, like that iPhone commercial where everyone has the vanilla ice cream cone. I don't know if you've saw that yet. You've got to see it there. It's just all ice cream cones on this commercial, and you don't even think it's a smartphone commercial until you realize they're busting that apple at the end for being so vanilla. That's the Arizona Cardinals offense for those who've seen that.
Okay, there you
go. JB's gonna be looking for that now. You gotta get a report back to me, JB.
I will. That's gonna be on the top of my list of things to do after this episode. Top priority. All right, Cincinnati Bengals with the newly acquired Joe Flacco. So the Bengals have 5 players in the top 150, 4 in the top 100. To 17 measly points per game with Jake Browning at the helm. They are 2-3. They're bringing Joe Flacco in. Can he turn this around? We'll see if he can stand upright long enough to help this offense out. But Chase Brown still lingering there, running back 17. Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1. T. Higgins, wide receiver 20. Again, like, I don't want, like, by default, it's Jamar Chase for me right now. It's not Chase Brown. Somebody said, I can't get a first in my league, but I got offered 2 seconds. Yep, I'm good with that.
This is the dysfunction of the Cincinnati Bengals. Like Joe Burrow, who can make any coach and staff look good, can make any bad O-line look good, gets injured, and this team just gets exposed. Like I sit here truly feeling bad for Chase Brown, T. Higgins, and all their dynasty owners in real life and in fantasy. Like, it is just a bad situation. There's just this head coach, this offensive coordinator. It is just bad. And that's another example of O-lines, JB. Certain teams could still manage offense with bad O-lines. Certain teams cannot. Cincinnati Bengals are one of those teams that can't. There's enough volume there. We know volume is important in fantasy football. And by the second half, there was enough volume and coming from behind that even Jake Browning was able to find an elite talent in Jamar Chase enough to make it a good fantasy day, but unfortunately not enough to support 2 or 3 guys in that offense. Even Yosivach was better than Chase Brown and T. Higgins last weekend. So maybe Joe Flacco, just based on experience, could spike things a tiny bit. But again, purpose of this exercise, I think if there is a window, now, like I said, Jamar Chase, I've seen him on 1 or 2 trade blocks. I think I ticked off one owner in my league because I saw the trade block again, and I forgot
No, not you.
He didn't like my Chase. Why do I keep going back to Chase Brown? My Jamar Chase offer, because I think I gave him the same offer I already gave him, and he already rejected it. But I was hoping for at least the counter. I'm like, ooh, Jamar Chase is on the trade block. Let's give it a go. So,
well, and he was probably a little bit easier to acquire. Not easy, but easier to acquire prior to this last week's game where he popped off in the second half, but
you get a 1-4 team, a struggling team that has Chase, and the situation doesn't look good in Cincinnati. Again, now is a time you could obtain him. I would obtain him just for the volume that you think he'll get, because they're going to be coming from behind probably most weeks. And then by next year, Joe Burrow's back, and then we can only just hope, not to wish anyone ever to lose their jobs, but at some point, Cincinnati's got to go in a different direction and say, hey, we've got to invest in O-line. We've got to change our scheme. Cincinnati owners incredibly loyal. They don't fire coaches often, but something's got to give in Cincinnati.
I'm looking at some of these T. Higgins trades. I changed my answer. I might have to go out and try to make some offers for T. Higgins. And again, it's not necessarily a bet on what he's going to do this year, even though we'll see if Joe Flacco can light things up a little bit. But for Derrick Henry straight up, not even going to read that one. Jalen Waddle for T. Higgins and Darren Waller in a 0.75 premium. There's some
Darren Waller,
trade.
man. All that fab I spent on Darren Waller has all been worth it in the last couple of weeks.
All right, let's hit these last several on rapid fire because we will be here a little bit longer than expected. Tennessee Titans, they only have 3 players in the top 150, only 1 player in the top 100. They're putting up dead last 14.6 points per game. Cam Ward, quarterback 16, Tony Pollard, wide receiver 33, Alec Iamaner, wide receiver 50. Can you get behind any of them at their current value?
I'm going to go with Cam Ward because I
wrong
think
answer.
He is no, not the wrong answer. Okay, we're gonna debate this one really quick. So Cam Ward is the right answer because when we look at the state of the quarterback situation, he is a guy that I think could solidify himself. You know, this is a team that's probably going to also fire their coach and staff. Maybe not. I don't know that. I think most likely, but they played with heart this week. They fought and they won a game. And
a game that was handed to them, but yeah.
Handed to them, totally. But if they don't fight like they do, they don't win that game. And Cam Ward's he's showing leadership in his rookie season. He's battling. I think he's going to be a good quarterback, especially if he gets a good offensive coordinator and head coach 1 year from now. So at QB 16, if I could obtain him, I'm going to sit on him and just the price is right, JB. I think he has value. Pollard's a declining asset.
I mean, this is the Bryce Young conversation that already happened previously. Like,
but he's taller, he's bigger, he's got more athleticism. He's a better Bryce Young, I think, in time. But the competition on this list, JB, Pollard's a declining asset, and then Iamaner, who is probably your right answer, he's like that stash guy that was like a little bit of a sleeper that wide receiver 50, I guess that's a good value. He could rise and become very good. I don't know.
I would go
answer,
Tony.
Isn't it?
No, I would go
Tony Pollard.
I would go Tony Pollard. The price to acquire, he's still a good back in my mind. I would like to see him get more heavily utilized in the passing game. But when we're talking about trying to at least make up for some of the lost production in an Amarion Hampton, maybe Travion Henderson, who isn't producing. I like Tony Pollard at his current value, and I think he is still very easily attainable. And I would much rather use those assets that you're going to spend on Cam Ward in a much different way.
Is there Tony Pollard trade examples? Because I think that's what it would take for me. I'm not giving up a second for Tony Pollard, JB.
Oh, I would
him for cheaper.
I would give a 26 second.
Would you? Because here's my problem. He's 28 years old. Come next football season, he's going to be 29. He's on a bad football team. I think his situation just isn't conducive for a 28 going on 29-year-old running back. He's still getting 13, 10, 14 points in the last 3 weeks, but you're really going to trade a second-round pick for a declining asset getting 10 to 15 points a game?
If you're looking to fill the running back position, who else are you going to move that second for?
I'd rather get Bill in Washington.
You're not getting him for a second.
And I think I saw him go for like 2 seconds in a player or something today. So you're probably right.
Even though I'd rather pay that for Bill as opposed to what you're paying for Cam Ward. But we got to move on here, Dan, so you can watch some of that hockey game.
I was busting you. You got me talking.
I know. Carolina Panthers, we got Bryce Young, Chuba Hubbard, Tet McMillan. Bryce Young, quarterback 24, Chuba Hubbard, running back 19, T-Mac, wide receiver 12. My answer is still McMillan. I think he's a tremendous talent. If things don't work out with Bryce Young, like the dude needs more targets. He needs a higher target share consolidate, like fewer targets to Tommy Tremble, more targets to T-Mac, please. So at wide receiver 12, I think he's a buy still.
Yeah, you're not wrong. They think they need to take your advice, just like you were given to Kyler Murray, to start feeding that ball to Marvin McBride. He just got to keep feeding Tet McMillan. Maybe when Coker comes back, it takes a little pressure off him because nobody else could get open. I don't know. Again, they have some line and some quarterback challenges, but Tet is definitely the correct answer there. That one was a layup.
Yeah, that's where I am too. All right, Cleveland Browns. So they have one asset, two assets in the top 100. They're tied for last in points per game at 14.6. They're 1-4. Dylan Gabriel at quarterback 29, who I was pleasantly surprised with. I think he controlled the game well. Obviously it didn't work out, but I think he played well. Quinshon Judkins at running back 16. Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver 43. Isaiah Bond at wide receiver 54. Harold Fannin at tight end 10. David Njoku at tight end 14. Who's really intriguing to you at their current value?
There's two guys here that are intriguing. Also, one guy not on this list, and Shedeur Sanders. One step closer with Flacco gone, JB. Defenses are going to make their adjustments to Dylan Gabriel, and at some point, Shedeur is going to start this year.
Well, I only listed the players in the top 150 for Dynasty assets, not the top 1,500.
Touche, could come back. But no, the correct answer, though, is, for me, again, there's two guys, so I'd say there's two correct answers. The answer I'm giving is Quinshon Judkins at RB16. Oh, you like how I did that balloon thing? I forget how I did it. Mitch and I discovered that a couple weeks ago.
How did you do that?
I make some sort of gestures with my hands because I'm Italian and I talk, and somehow balloons and different things come up. I just forget how I did it. I'll have to go back and watch the replay after. But Judkins, to me, is my pick. Again, at RB16, he is looking good. But Harold Fannin, even at tight end 10, I love the way they use them. I'd be interested to see what they do with the tight end position a year from now. But Judkins is my answer.
Which is interesting in how you're whistling a different tune, but production can certainly do that to somebody. So if you're able to get him at that price tag, yes, please sign me up. I think it's gonna be very challenging.
It is. Stock is up right now. We're a week to 2 weeks too late.
Yeah,
but RB16, he could be a top 12 back next year.
It's going to be tough with a lot of these quarterbacks, more like Dylan Gabriel, Spencer Rattler. Like, their teams are probably going to be in a prime position to take a quarterback next year. How does it play out? Do they move back? There's a lot of different things that we could talk about there. But I like Judkins at that price. New Orleans Saints. Spencer Rattler, quarterback 31. Alvin Kamara, running back 22. Kendre Miller, running back 38. Chris Olave, wide receiver 30. Jawan Johnson, tight end 23. I still like the talent in Chris Olave. Like Chris Olave is like in that spot. I have so many different players. Like I have 15 wide receivers. Their value is that later 26 first. Do I want to move the first for them? Not necessarily, but I will certainly get to that value. Can I get that for Chris Olave? So, yep. Tim says Olave has been a target hog. Yeah, and if we can get a quarterback upgrade there for Chris Olave, and he can stay healthy, knock on wood, he's been okay so far, I think he's one that's going to be interesting. And if you can get him at a nice price, I think now is the time to potentially look at Chris Olave.
Somehow Chris Olave is still only 25 years of age.
I know.
Stay healthy, offensive mind to Kellen Moore. Next year you get a quarterback at wide receiver 30. He's the value of this list.
And Olave is the highest value dynasty asset for the Saints at 78th overall. New York Jets. Oh, man. So Justin Fields, quarterback 23. But if you need quarterback production, he's still giving it to you. Just you can lump him in with Rattler and Dylan Gabriel in terms of stability beyond 2025. Breece Hall, running back 14. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 14. Mason Taylor, tight end 20. My answer, it's the genetics, baby. I'm going Mason Taylor. He he is shown to be, I talked about the first read target share for Theo Johnson. It's Mason Taylor and Garrett Wilson. And you get Breece Hall sprinkled in the receiving game as well. But Mason Taylor, he's getting the volume, surprisingly, in what is seen as a low volume, and it is low volume passing attack. And again, just like we talked about with Chris Olave, I would expect that there is a change with the head coach. Aaron Glenn, I don't think he's going to be there after this year, the way things are going. I think it's going to be a one and done. And I think there's going to be a quarterback change moving forward. But again, Fields is giving you fantasy production this year, just not resulting in wins.
What I didn't understand in that Jets-Cowboys game, and I watched that one really closely, is if you watch Dallas any week, that they struggle at the linebacker position, and you have Justin Fields, and there was 0 designed run plays in that game for Justin Fields. Why they got away from it? So, like, if Aaron Glenn does survive for some reason, his offensive coordinator, Tanner Erkstrand, I don't know if that's the right choice, man, because there was just like no game plan there. Now they ran the ball well. Hall fumbled, unfortunately, but he looked electric. Garrett Wilson still looks electric, but you are right, JB. Mason Taylor at tight end 20. He was my 3rd rookie tight end in this year's class, and it was a very good class with Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. I love Mason Taylor. They're feeding him. He's getting open. He protects the ball. He looks the part. That's a great value there.
You mean Mason Taylor behind Tyler Warren and Harold Fannin then?
Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast.
Not so fast. All right. That takes us, last but not least, the Miami Dolphins. They have 6 players in the top 150, 3 in the top 100, 21.4 points per game. 2 has actually been like, he's been okay. But we got 2 at quarterback 27, Devon Achane running back 6, Waddle at wide receiver 29, Tyreek Hill wide receiver 44, which, I mean, we're talking about him being on waivers in some leagues. And then Darren Waller back from the dead, tight end 15. So who are you looking at here?
Oh, man. This is the hardest one of all these. And this is another team that I think that coaching staff's gonna be gone, and it's gonna be a new project next year. I don't like a lot of these guys other than Achane, but at RB6, it's not really a value to me. Hey, if the offense was good and he was running the ball as well as he catches it, maybe there's something there. He's definitely the best player of this group. But if you're talking value, maybe Waddle at wide receiver 29. I mean, the rest of the season, Hill's out. Does Hill rebound from that injury? Does Miami even just move on for him? Maybe Waddle gets some sort of wide receiver 1 situation or a better offensive coaching staff. So value, I kind of leaned Waddle. As much as I'm loving Darren Waller, he's still older, and I can't go there. So Waddle's my answer, but Achane's the guy I'd want.
And at tight end 15, if that's the price tag of Darren Waller, is that a value? And I scooped up a ton, I want to say for free, but with Fab off of waivers.
Darren Waller, he's just old and he's injury prone. He hasn't been injured. They brought him back wisely. It's just, we do know healthy Darren Waller is a receiver. Like he's a weapon. So for those that purchased him for Fab and hopped on it, good job.
Yeah, I saw somebody say there was a question in the Discord. It was, should I move him for any third? Well, if you're using him, if you're getting production from him, ride him into the ground.
Right. Let him retire on your roster.
But I'm coming back around on Tua, man. Like, just stay healthy. I mean,
here's what I don't know on Tua. Like, a lot of like NFL people will often say he's a 1 read, first read kind of guy, and he doesn't go to his second read, and he's just like perfect in the system. So to me, my question is, what is he outside of this system? I don't know that answer. And we have, the concussion history. So I have concerns, but JB, to your point, when that offense is clicking with Timon and him getting rid of the ball, he seems to be able to put up some fantasy stats at quarterback 27. That's not bad. That could be the right answer.
Yeah, like it's not a bad price. I would say that I'm looking to acquire more, but I have a ton still. And it's funny because Tua, his first read percentage is 66%, which is below, let me see, below Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, Herbert, Darnold, Penix, May, Rodgers, Lamar. So that's interesting to me because we think of it like, oh, well, he can play in that system. But then on the other hand, we want McDaniel gone. Like the offense, they're only putting up 21 points per game, kind of middle of the pack. But I do think Tua, he gets a bad rap a little bit, but the concussions are always going to be on the back of dynasty managers' minds, and that's never going to go away. So for me, it's still Tua, but that's kind of by default. Like if Waddle could stay healthy, wide receiver 29 seems like a steal. And Tim says, look at the Miami offense without Tua. It's garbage. Yeah. Have you, I don't want to keep you too long here, but like whenever MVP discussions come up, and I'm not saying Tua is an MVP, but more so like when Joe Burrow is missing or when Lamar is missing, and you look at these offenses, doesn't that show you how valuable these players truly are to their teams when their offense is just complete trash without them? But you never really hear about like the injury discussion. Like it's always, well, that player was out, so they're not going to be in the MVP discussion. But that shows you how truly valuable they are.
They had a minimum team MVP, and it also is the state of that quarterback position. There's a big drop off when you get to those backups. If you don't have the system and the O-line and everything you need, I mean, I don't even remember who their current backup is, Tyler Huntley, or it's changed a couple of times. It's a drop off.
Zach Wilson's there. And then just something I thought was interesting. Detroit has 6 players in the top 100. That's the most. Dallas has 5. Steelers only have 1. It's DK Metcalf, and he was at 70th overall on Dynasty Daddy rankings. So going through some of the trash, if you will, but also want to spend some time tonight talking about the Amarion Hampton injury, ways to navigate around that situation. Travion Henderson, is now the time to buy low, or is that value going to continue to fall because of his lack of usage? And then trying to find some hidden gems, maybe not so hidden, but gems on some of these teams that are towards the bottom of the standings and aren't necessarily high-powered offenses, but still nice dynasty values. For Dan Lamagna, Mitch Sorensen, who obviously is not here, if you just noticed now, maybe you weren't paying attention. I'm John Bauer. We hope you all enjoyed this week's episode. We'll catch you next week. Peace.